In life, nothing prepares a parent for the heartbreak of losing a child. No words can capture the moment when the person they love most is suddenly gone forever. And when tragedy strikes, even the biggest superstars are stripped of their strength. They may be legends on stage, champions in the ring, or icons on the screen, but behind the spotlight, they are simply mothers and fathers shattered by unimaginable loss. A sudden passing, a devastating accident, a choice that changes everything in an instant. None of them saw it coming. The 25 stories you're about to hear reveal the deepest heartbreak hidden behind the seemingly perfect lives of 25 leading Black Hollywood stars. Stay with me to understand the profound grief and strength behind their untold journeys. Bobby Brown. A name that once ruled the R&B world. Chart-topping hits, electric performances, and a headline-grabbing romance with Whitney Houston that felt larger than life. From the outside, it looked like fame and fortune had crowned him untouchable. But behind the flashing lights and roaring crowds was a man walking through relentless heartbreak, a life shadowed by loss that refused to loosen its grip. Tragedy struck again in 2020. On November 18th, devastating news ripped through headlines: Bobby Brown Jr. was gone. Just 28 years old, found lifeless in his Los Angeles apartment. Empty liquor bottles nearby, fentanyl and cocaine in his system. A story heartbreakingly familiar, yet still impossible to accept. At 11:30 that morning, Bobby's phone rang. One call, one voice. And before the words were even finished, he knew. The nightmare had returned. His hand tightened around the phone as reality shattered. His son wasn't breathing anymore. The world around him seemed to collapse, yet he stood frozen, numb. He had heard those same crushing words before. In 2012, it was Whitney. In 2015, it was Bobby Christina, his only daughter, lost under eerily similar circumstances. Now, another child taken the same merciless way. The pain was no longer shocking, it was suffocating. He drove through Los Angeles in a blur, sirens in his chest louder than the traffic around him. When he burst into Bobby Jr.'s apartment, silence swallowed the room. His son lay still, cold, gone. A tipped glass of liquor on the floor, faint traces of white powder on the table. Evidence of one night that turned into forever. The child he once cradled in his arms was now only a memory frozen in time. At the funeral, the air felt heavy with grief. Cameras flashed endlessly, reporters circled, but Bobby Brown seemed untouched by the chaos. His eyes were hollow, his spirit drained. 2 children gone within 5 years. The woman he loved taken before them. Drugs had haunted every chapter of his story, carving wounds that never had time to heal. Once a proud R&B icon, Bobby Brown now stood as a father shattered by losses no heart was ever meant to endure. James Brown. James Brown. A scream cutting through the night, and the devastating loss of a son taken too soon. Known as the King of Soul, Brown was a force of nature, a man whose fiery voice and electrifying dance moves set the world ablaze. On stage, he was unstoppable, a living symbol of American music, pulsing with raw energy and unmatched charisma. But behind the spotlight and roaring crowds lived a man carrying deep, private pain. The darkest chapter of his life came on a tragic night in 1973 when he lost his beloved son. On June 14th, a quiet Georgia evening turned into a nightmare. A car suddenly lost control, veered off the road, spun violently, and crashed with brutal force. When the wreckage finally stilled, 19-year-old Teddy Brown, James's firstborn, lay motionless among shattered glass and twisted metal. Hours later, a phone rang inside James Brown's mansion. When he answered, only one chilling sentence came through the line: "Teddy's been in an accident." The phone slipped from his hand. His chest tightened like it was being crushed. He rushed out the door, breath uneven, eyes frantic. The man who once commanded thousands with a single scream was now just a terrified father running toward heartbreak he could barely comprehend. At the crash site, he froze. The car was unrecognizable. Debris littered the ground. He fell to his knees, fists clenched so tightly they bled. Authorities called it a tragic accident, but whispers began to spread. Was there more to the story? Rumors grew louder, yet none of it mattered to James Brown. The only truth that remained was that Teddy, his pride, his hope, was gone forever. 4 days later, at the funeral, James Brown stood motionless before his son's casket. Not a tear fell. His face was still, almost carved from stone. But after everyone left and the room fell silent, witnesses saw him standing alone in the darkness, eyes lifted toward the sky. His lips moved faintly, as if whispering into the night. Maybe he was calling Teddy's name. Maybe he was wrestling with guilt. Or maybe, deep down, he was praying for the impossible, one more moment with his son. O.J. Simpson. A football legend. A name once synonymous with speed, strength, and unstoppable glory. On the field, he was a hero to millions. A man who seemed larger than life, racing through defenders with explosive power and rewriting NFL history with every stride. But far from the roaring stadiums and flashing cameras, a quiet family afternoon would become the darkest chapter of his life. A tragedy so deep it would leave a scar no fame could ever erase. August 18, 1979. The California sun burned bright over his lavish home, the day unfolding like any other. Peaceful, ordinary, safe, or so it seemed. Then suddenly, a piercing scream ripped through the backyard, shattering the calm in an instant. Panic erupted as people ran toward the pool, only to freeze at a heartbreaking sight. Little Erin Simpson, just 1 year and 11 months old, lay motionless beneath the water's surface. No one knew how long she had been there. Seconds? Minutes? Time seemed to collapse as someone dove in and lifted her tiny, lifeless body from the pool, her skin cold and still. A frantic 911 call echoed through the chaos. Sirens screamed as paramedics rushed her to UCLA Medical Center, fighting desperately to save her fragile life. Arrived soon after, his face drained of color, his hands trembling with fear he could not hide. For 8 agonizing days, he rarely left her side, watching helplessly as machines beeped and doctors fought to keep hope alive. Every breath she took felt like a miracle hanging by a thread. The hospital held its breath, praying for a miracle that never came. On August 26th, the doctors entered the room with heavy hearts. Their silence said everything. Leaned over his daughter one last time, gently brushing her tiny face as grief crashed over him like a tidal wave. His little girl was gone. From that moment on, the man the world once saw as unstoppable was forever changed. No matter the fame, the scandals, or the controversies that would later define his public image, the loss of Erin remained a wound carved deep into his soul, a sorrow that time could never erase. Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey. At just 14, she endured a loss no child should ever face, losing a baby in the dead of winter. Long before she became the queen of media and one of the most influential women on earth, Oprah's early life was marked by poverty, silence, and unimaginable hardship. Yet nothing compared to the tragedy that carved a permanent scar into her heart. That was the year she lost her firstborn, a tiny life that never truly had the chance to see the world. In 1968, Oprah was still a frightened teenage girl, carrying a child conceived through months of abuse. She suffered in silence. No one noticed. No one asked. She hid her growing belly beneath loose clothes, carrying fear and shame alone. There were no doctors, no guidance, only a young girl trapped inside a harsh, unforgiving reality. Then came a freezing November night. Without warning, searing pain tore through her body. She didn't understand what was happening. She only knew the agony was overwhelming. In panic and confusion, she gave birth alone, right where she stood. The baby boy was so small he could almost fit in her hands. His breaths were shallow, his fragile body trembling against hers. Oprah held him close, desperate to protect him, but fate had already decided otherwise. Less than a day after entering the world, her son passed away. There were no doctors to help, no one rushing in to save him. She watched helplessly as his tiny hand grew cold in hers. And what hurt even more was the silence that followed. No funeral, no gravestone, no photographs, no acknowledgement that he had ever existed. It was as if his life disappeared the moment it began. For years, that grief stayed with her, heavy and unspoken. There were moments she believed the darkness would swallow her whole, that her future had ended before it ever began. But from that unimaginable loss, Oprah found strength. She transformed pain into purpose, heartbreak into resilience, and rose from the shadows to become a woman whose voice would one day inspire millions around the world. Nick Cannon. Bright lights, big laughs, unstoppable energy. To the world, he's the electrifying MC, the quick-witted comedian, the charismatic performer who can own any stage. But behind the spotlight lives a father who has known unimaginable heartbreak. In 2021, Nick faced the deepest tragedy of his life, the loss of his 5-month-old son, Zen. On December 5th, as Hollywood buzzed like any other day, Nick appeared on television with red eyes and a face heavy with exhaustion. He shared words no parent ever wants to say. His baby boy was gone. Zen, the tiny angel with shining eyes and a gentle smile, had lost his battle with an aggressive brain cancer. The nightmare hadn't come all at once. It began quietly, when Nick noticed something unusual about Zen's head. At first, he told himself it was nothing, just normal baby changes. Then came the devastating diagnosis, a malignant brain tumor. The world seemed to collapse in a single sentence. Why Zen? Why a child who had barely begun to experience life? Still, Nick didn't have the luxury of falling apart. He and Zen's mother, Alyssa Scott, clung to every ounce of hope. Treatments were discussed, including chemotherapy, but no one could promise a miracle, only more pain. Soon they faced the most heartbreaking decision imaginable: prolong the suffering or let their son rest in peace, surrounded by love. With shattered hearts, they chose love. On Zen's final morning, Nick carried him to the beach. The little boy felt the ocean breeze, the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of the waves. Nick held him close, whispering words only a father could share with his son, trying to memorize every breath, every blink, every moment, knowing it was their last. Hours later, Zen slipped away peacefully. Days afterward, when Nick returned to the airwaves, he wasn't the larger-than-life entertainer audiences knew. He was simply a grieving father, fighting to hold himself together under the weight of an unbearable loss. The laughter remained, but so did the silence Zen left behind, a space no applause, no spotlight could ever fill. Mike Tyson, a name once synonymous with raw power and fear, faced a pain no champion could ever defeat. The boxing legend who dominated the world with iron fists and an undefeated aura was brought to his knees by an unimaginable tragedy. On May 25, 2009, his life shattered when his 4-year-old daughter, Exodus Tyson, was critically injured in a devastating accident at their Phoenix, Arizona home. In a heartbreaking instant, while playing near a treadmill, a loose cord became a fatal trap. When her mother found her unresponsive, panic took over. Trembling hands struggled to free her as desperate calls to 911 filled the air. Paramedics rushed in, fighting against the clock with CPR and life-saving measures, refusing to give up as they raced her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Tyson was in Las Vegas. The moment he received the call, the world stopped. Numb with shock, he boarded the first flight he could find, but time was cruel and distance unforgiving. After a day of clinging to life, doctors delivered the devastating news on May 26th. There was nothing more they could do. When Tyson arrived at St. Joseph's Hospital, hope was already gone. The man who had once knocked out opponents in seconds collapsed in grief, sobbing like a broken father rather than a fearless fighter. In the aftermath, Iron Mike faded from the spotlight, consumed by sorrow. Titles, fame, and fortune meant nothing against a loss so deep no victory could heal it. And for the rest of his life, one haunting question lingered in his heart. What if I could have done something to save her? Tina Turner, rock and roll's unstoppable queen, survived abuse, heartbreak, and a lifetime of battles to reclaim her dazzling crown. Yet even legends face wounds too deep to bear. On July 3, 2018, her firstborn son, Craig Turner, died by suicide at 59, leaving behind a silence no fame or strength could ever fill. Tina was in Paris when the devastating call shattered the peace she had finally found with her husband, Erwin Bach. In an instant, joy collapsed into grief. Craig, the son she cherished, was gone, alone in his Studio City apartment. No one can fully know the storms he carried inside. A childhood marked by fear as he witnessed Ike Turner's violence against his mother, scars that time could never fully erase. Though Craig built a successful career and a quiet life, shadows seemed to follow him, lingering just beyond the light. Weeks later, on July 19th, standing aboard a yacht off the California coast, Tina held her son's urn and released his ashes into the endless sea, praying he would finally find peace. But even for the strongest woman in rock history, a mother's heart can never truly heal from losing her child. Bill Cosby, once the man who filled millions of American homes with laughter, the beloved TV dad who seemed larger than life. But beyond the spotlight, he carried a grief no parent should ever know. On January 16, 1997, his only son, Ennis Cosby, was killed during a senseless robbery in Los Angeles. One brutal moment that shattered everything. Around 1 a.m., on a lonely stretch of highway, Ennis pulled over to fix a flat tire. It was an ordinary decision, the kind anyone makes without a second thought. In the darkness, a stranger approached. A single gunshot broke the silence, and in seconds, a promising life was gone. When police arrived, Ennis lay motionless beside his car, his future stolen in an instant. The news raced across the nation, leaving Bill Cosby stunned and helpless. A father who had always tried to shield his family now faced an unimaginable loss. Ennis was more than a victim. He was a determined young man who overcame dyslexia and was working toward a PhD at Columbia University. At the funeral, Cosby stood quietly before his son's casket, grief too deep for words or tears. The man who once made America laugh understood that nothing would ever feel the same again. A piece of his heart was buried with Ennis forever. Cissy Houston, a mother carrying the unbearable weight of loss, forced to watch her daughter slip into a grief no one could outrun. A woman who devoted her life to music, she also raised one of the most extraordinary voices the world has ever known, Whitney Houston. She witnessed her child rise to dazzling heights of fame, and then slowly fall into a darkness that fame itself helped create. On February 11, 2012, Cissy's worst nightmare became reality. At the Beverly Hilton Hotel, on the eve of the Grammy Awards, Hollywood buzzed with glittering parties and flashing cameras. But inside a quiet fourth-floor room, Whitney Houston lay motionless in a bathtub. By the time hotel staff found her, it was already too late. She was gone at just 48 after years of battling addiction and the heavy shadows that followed her stardom. Miles away, Cissy had no warning that her world was about to shatter. The phone rang. A voice delivered the unimaginable. In an instant, everything changed. Whitney, her baby girl, her angelic voice, was no longer a living presence, but a memory frozen in time. 1 week later, on February 18, 2012, New Hope Baptist Church, the place where Whitney first lifted her voice in song, filled instead with farewell hymns. As Cissy stood there for one final goodbye, words and tears felt too small to hold the depth of her pain. A piece of her heart was gone forever. And from that moment on, the woman who had once been so strong was never quite the same again. Regina King, an Oscar winner, a force of strength, a woman who seemed to have everything, until the day her world shattered. Behind the red carpets and radiant smiles was a private grief no spotlight could ever touch. On January 21, 2022, just days after his 26th birthday, her only son, Ian Alexander Jr., died, leaving behind a silence nothing could fill. They weren't just mother and son, they were best friends, true companions who shared laughter, dreams, and a bond the world could see but never fully understand. Ian was a gifted young musician, thoughtful and deeply sensitive, carrying emotions that ran far deeper than anyone realized. When the news reached Regina, time seemed to stop. The child she had loved, protected, and watched grow was suddenly gone. No parent is ever prepared for that moment. She once believed a mother's love could shield her child from every storm, but some battles are fought in silence. Ian adored her, and she adored him, yet even that powerful love couldn't keep him here. Since that heartbreaking day, Regina King has stepped away from the spotlight. The powerful voice that once filled stages has grown quiet, replaced by the raw truth of a grieving mother learning to live with an unfillable loss. Because losing a child isn't just losing someone you love, it's losing a piece of your own soul, a pain that echoes for a lifetime. Sam Cooke, more than a voice, more than a legend, was the sound of a generation searching for love, hope, and change. On stage, he radiated warmth and brilliance. Off stage, he carried a heartbreak no melody could heal. On June 17, 1963, tragedy shattered his world. His beloved daughter, little Vincent, only 18 months old, was taken in a devastating accident no parent could ever imagine. It was a sweltering Los Angeles afternoon when Sam left the studio, energized by new songs and a bright future ahead, until a single phone call turned joy into unbearable silence. In one unthinkable moment, his tiny angel slipped from sight and fell into the still waters of the backyard pool. By the time she was found, hope had already begun to fade. Sam rushed to the hospital, clinging to the possibility of a miracle, but the child he had cradled and sung to each night was gone, leaving a void no music could ever fill. The man whose voice once soared with love was left shattered, his spirit forever marked by loss. After Vincent's passing, a deeper sorrow echoed through his songs, and just a year later, Sam himself was gone in a mysterious death, leaving behind a legacy of music, pain, and the quiet hope that somewhere beyond this world, father and daughter found each other again. Joseph Simmons, known to the world as Reverend Run, was a hip-hop pioneer, a founding force behind the legendary Run DMC, and a man who seemed to have everything: fame, success, and a loving family. But behind the spotlight lived a grief no one could see. On September 26, 2006, what should have been the happiest day of his life became his darkest nightmare. His long-awaited daughter, Victoria Ann Simmons, passed away just moments after her first fragile cry. Even before she was born, Victoria faced impossible odds. Diagnosed with a rare condition in which her organs developed outside her body. Still, Reverend Run and his wife, Justine, held tightly to hope. They prayed, they believed, they dreamed of bringing their little girl home. When she finally entered the world under the harsh glow of the delivery room lights, her faint cries filled the air, and for a brief, beautiful moment, hope felt real. But within minutes, that joy shattered. Her tiny heart gave out, and silence swallowed the room. No miracle arrived. A man who had stood fearless on stages around the world found himself powerless, watching his daughter slip away. Victoria's life lasted only a fleeting moment, yet the emptiness she left behind would echo in her parents' hearts forever. Marvin Jones Jr. had always looked unstoppable, a gifted football star delivering explosive moments on the field, a devoted father living what seemed like a perfect life. A thriving career, a loving family, a future full of promise. But in a single, unimaginable moment, everything changed. On December 27, 2019, while the world was still wrapped in holiday joy, Marvin received the most devastating news a parent could ever hear. His 6-month-old son, Marvis Jr., was gone. There were no warning signs, no time to prepare for the heartbreak. Just the day before, his baby boy had been smiling innocently in his parents' arms. And then, without explanation, their world shattered. A sudden medical complication, mysterious and cruel, stole their child in a storm of shock and unbearable grief. The man who had stood fearless against countless opponents on the field found himself crushed by a loss far greater than any game. The laughter, the dreams, the vision of his son's future, all vanished in an instant. And Marvin knew that this kind of pain wasn't something you leave behind. It becomes a part of you forever. Eddie Levert, the legendary voice of the OJs, gave the world timeless music and a presence that felt larger than life. On stage, he looked like a man who had everything. Off stage, he endured a heartbreak few could imagine, the loss of both of his sons in less than 2 years. On November 10, 2006, his eldest son Gerald Levert, a gifted singer who carried on the family legacy, died suddenly at just 40 from an accidental painkiller overdose. Before the weight of that grief could even begin to fade, tragedy struck again. On March 30, 2008, his younger son Sean Levert died in jail after only 6 days in custody, reportedly without access to needed medication. 2 funerals. 2 unimaginable losses within 17 months. And for Eddie Levert, a silence deeper than any song. A lifetime marked not only by legendary success, but by a sorrow no father should ever have to endure. Dr. Dre, an icon who helped define hip-hop and shape a generation, once stood at the peak of fame, crowned by timeless hits and global respect. Yet behind the legend lived a father carrying a grief no success could erase. On the quiet morning of August 23, 2008, an eerie stillness settled over his Woodland Hills mansion in Los Angeles. When the bedroom door of his beloved son, Andre Young Jr., finally opened, a nightmare unfolded. The 20-year-old had died from an overdose of heroin and morphine, gone without a final goodbye. Dre had spent years rapping about the dangers lurking in the street's darkest corners, but never imagined that darkness would reach into his own home. The man who built an empire and influenced millions was left facing a loss that stripped away the spotlight, revealing not a superstar, but a father shattered in silence. Gladys Knight, an iconic voice who shaped the sound of soul with timeless hits, lived a life that reached far beyond the spotlight. In 1999, she faced a heartbreak no mother should endure when her son, Jimmy Newman, passed away at just 36. The official cause was heart failure, but the deeper truth was years of addiction that slowly wore him down. Jimmy wasn't only her child, he was a piece of her heart, the boy who once stood beside her backstage, growing up surrounded by music before losing his way. Gladys fought fiercely to save him, but addiction proved relentless. When he finally slipped away, she didn't cry out, she fell into a heavy silence, carrying the painful realization that she had been losing him for years. And in that quiet moment, grief became something permanent, an ache no song could ever heal. Bobby Womack, soul music legend, the voice behind timeless love songs, a man known for his fiery spirit, also carried unimaginable grief. In 1978, his world shattered when his firstborn son, Truth, died at just 4 months old. A heartbreaking accident stole away the tiny life that had filled his days with hope and joy. Suffocation in his crib, sudden, cruel, and impossible to accept. For a man who had survived countless struggles, this loss was different. It cut deeper than anything he had ever faced. The laughter vanished, the lullabies fell silent, and in their place lingered a haunting stillness that followed Bobby for the rest of his life, a wound that never truly healed. Prince, musical genius, fearless innovator, a man whose sound reshaped the world, once faced a heartbreak no fame or fortune could shield him from. In 1996, just as life seemed to be soaring, tragedy struck with unimaginable force. His firstborn son, Amir Nelson, entered the world already fighting a cruel battle against Pfeiffer syndrome, a rare and devastating condition. Only 6 days later, the child was gone. For an artist who could turn every emotion into unforgettable music, this loss left a silence no melody could fill. Prince, a man who appeared to have everything, was suddenly confronted with the one pain no success can soften, the loss of a child. He pressed forward, pouring himself into his art, searching for strength in creation, yet the wound remained, a quiet shadow he carried for the rest of his life. Rick James, the funk visionary, the fearless rule breaker, the man whose electrifying hits once rattled the charts, seemed untouchable to the world. But in 1992, life delivered a devastating blow no legend could outrun. His 14-year-old son, Rick James Jr., known as Tasman, was taken in a sudden car accident. No warning, no second chances, only one heartbreaking phone call that changed everything forever. Tasman was Rick's brightest hope, a child destined for a future even greater than his father's. Instead, that promise was cut tragically short. The rebel who once defied every limit was left standing not as an icon, but as a grieving father facing an unbearable silence. In one cruel moment, the crash didn't just claim a young life. It shattered the spirit of a man the world believed could never be broken. Lou Rawls, a soul legend whose rich, velvety voice moved millions, spent a lifetime singing about love, heartbreak, and hope. He stood on dazzling stages around the world, pouring emotion into every note. But in 2005, his own life was shattered by a tragedy no song could heal. His beloved son, Sean Rawls, just 23 years old, died in a devastating car crash. One cruel moment changed everything. A late-night phone call delivered the unthinkable news: Sean was gone, without a final goodbye. The man who once gave voice to life's deepest feelings was left in a silence filled with unbearable grief. Only months later, Lou himself passed away. Lung cancer was named the official cause, yet those close to him believed the heartbreak of losing his son had already taken the greatest toll on his soul. Marlon Jackson, a voice from the legendary Jackson 5, a man who once set the world on fire with timeless music, carried a heartbreak few ever saw. Behind the bright stage lights and roaring crowds lived a father facing an unimaginable loss. In 1987, while his career still sparkled, his world fell into shadow. His daughter, Brittany Jackson, was born too soon and didn't survive. She came into this world and was gone in a heartbeat. No lullabies, no precious moments in his arms. Marlon had dreamed of a beautiful future for his little girl, but fate tore those dreams away without warning. Still, he stepped onto the stage, still wore a brave smile for his fans, yet the quiet ache inside him never disappeared. Brittany Jackson, a name forever carried in his heart, a love that never fades. KRS-One, a legend, philosopher, a voice that turned hip-hop into a movement. Known as a teacher and a warrior for truth, his lyrics carried power, purpose, and hard-earned wisdom. But behind the strength and the sermons was a father who faced a heartbreak no words could repair. In 2007, while he was still inspiring millions through music and messages of awareness, tragedy struck. His son, Randy Parker, was gone at just 23. No warning. No second chance to change the ending. Only a silence that echoed louder than any stage. The man who had helped guide lost souls through rhythm and reason was left wrestling with questions that never fade. Did I miss the signs? Could I have reached him in time? Ree's death became a wound beyond music, a sorrow no verse could heal, and a reminder that even the strongest voices carry unseen pain. Scottie Pippen, a name etched into NBA history. A relentless competitor, a six-time champion, and the indispensable partner who helped Michael Jordan build a dynasty. He had everything many dream of: global fame, immense success, and the unwavering respect of the basketball world. Yet in 2021, his life was shattered by a loss no victory could prepare him for: the passing of his eldest son, Antron Pippen, at just 33 years old. Antron was born into a legacy that seemed destined for greatness, but chronic asthma became an invisible barrier between him and the NBA dreams he chased so fiercely. He fought with courage and resilience, facing daily battles few could see, until fate dealt its cruelest hand. And Scottie, a legend who conquered giants on the court, found himself helpless in the most important fight of all. What remained was not the roar of arenas or the glory of championships, but a father's quiet, enduring heartbreak, a pain that no trophy, no triumph, could ever erase. George Foreman, a titan of the ring, a man who built his name on power, grit, and unbreakable will. He toppled giants, claimed 2 heavyweight world titles, and earned his place among boxing's immortals. But in 2019, life delivered a blow no champion could defend against. Not under bright arena lights, but in the quiet, unforgiving hands of fate. His daughter, Frida Foreman, passed away at just 42, leaving behind dreams and battles few ever saw. Frida was never only George Foreman's daughter. She stepped into the spotlight on her own terms, chasing greatness with fierce determination and scoring 5 consecutive knockout victories. Yet the weight of a legendary legacy can be heavier than any opponent. She eventually walked away from boxing, hoping to find peace beyond the ropes, but some struggles remain unseen. In March 2019, her life came to a heartbreaking end. And George Foreman, once viewed as unstoppable, stood not as a champion, but as a father carrying a loss too deep for words, a pain that lingers far beyond the final bell. Styles P, a street hip-hop legend, a survivor who fought his way through life's darkest corners. He wasn't just a rapper with a signature style, he was a voice for the unheard, a storyteller for the lost and forgotten. But in 2015, his world shattered in a way no fame or strength could protect him from. His son, Noah Styles, passed away at just 20 years old, not because of violence, not because of illness, but because he chose to end his own life. Born into the spotlight of hip-hop royalty, Noah grew up surrounded by music and recognition, yet even that glow couldn't chase away the silent battles inside him. Beneath the weight of a powerful name and the shadows of expectation, he struggled, and eventually fell. Styles P had overcome countless obstacles throughout his career, but this was one fight he couldn't win. He couldn't save his son. And ever since, you can hear it in every verse, see it in every quiet moment. A pain that never truly fades. Because losing a child isn't just heartbreak, it's a wound that never fully heals. No matter how famous, powerful, or admired someone may be, when tragedy strikes, they are simply parents left shattered by unimaginable loss. What are your thoughts on the tragedies they endured? Share your perspective in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more powerful stories behind the seemingly perfect lives of Hollywood's biggest stars.